just over 2 weeks apart, Digimon Time Stranger and Pokemon Legends ZA have both taken the internet by storm, dominating social media and selling huge numbers. Both games inspired cosplayers, streamers, artists, yes, all kinds of artists, and all sorts of creators, and won the hearts of hundreds of thousands of people online. But with both games released so close together, especially when many people unfamiliar with Digimon consider it merely a Pokemon clone, how have both games fared? Let's take a look. When Digimon Time Stranger released, it obliterated Steam records in its genre, with a peak concurrent player rate of over 70,000 players on Steam alone. I personally couldn't open X without seeing constant praises for the game, and even my live streams playing it were getting massive views compared to my usual. But when Pokemon came out, the attention was barely even comparable. Though Digimon broke player records, it couldn't compare with Pokemon's almost 6 million copies sold already. Ever since Pokemon's release, my timeline hasn't seen a single mention of Digimon, and 2 of my Pokemon shorts received over 75,000 views! Pokemon not only became what everyone was posting, but what everyone wanted to see. And despite being the game that many players would argue is the better game, Digimon fell somewhat into obscurity, which is tragic, because out of the two, I genuinely think it's the better game, though I have yet to fully complete either, so my opinion could change. In terms of gameplay, Pokemon and Digimon are quite different, despite what the names might lead you to believe. Let's start with the easiest point to compare: how you actually obtain all the monsters. In Pokemon Legends ZA, like every other Pokemon game, you can obtain Pokemon via catching, trading, or evolving. The game has wild zones in the city where you can find wild Pokemon, battle, and throw Pokeballs once the capture rate is increased to catch the Pokemon. Most Pokemon also have an evolved form you can reach by battling or by using items like stones. However, in Digimon Time Stranger, you obtain Digimon by battling enough of them to essentially duplicate their DNA and make yourself a clone of the same Digimon, which can later be digivolved. The evolution chains are also chaotic and host numerous possibilities. For example, this blob can turn from a blob to a rat to a cat to a hot demonic lady, or the same blob can evolve into a giant gun. It all depends on your Digimon's mood and traits, forcing you to carefully plan your evolutions and calculate your actions much more than just leveling up. In Pokemon, all EXP for leveling comes from battle or items, but in Digimon, you can also sacrifice weaker Digimon to fortify your stronger ones, which becomes crucial for obtaining certain types of Digimon. One big difference between the Digimon game series and the Pokemon game series is the narrative. Digimon games have stories that are much darker than you'd expect, including human character deaths and even entire cities seemingly getting nuked. Though I haven't been able to finish one yet myself, I have been told that Cyber Sleuth in particular has some incredibly dark themes, including an organ harvesting plot. And these moments aren't subtle either. The game lets you know exactly what's happening, with a cutscene of Shinjuku getting nuked early on in the game. The stories and games are also incredibly long, easily making Pokemon games feel short in comparison. Though Pokemon does have its darker moments and lore, the tone overall is much lighter or subtle, making it more digestible to younger fans. I haven't finished ZA yet, so it's hard for me to comment on story, but so far at least, the tone has been pretty lighthearted with some underlying unsettling tones. I have heard the story gets amazing towards the end though, so I'll have to play more and let you guys know what I think. In terms of overall story and tone, many people who've played both games refer to Digimon as a Pokemon that grew up with its audience. In terms of music, it's really hard to say which game comes out on top. Pokemon Legends ZA and Digimon Story Time Stranger both hold strong musically, so it's just a matter of taste. If you've played Danganronpa, you might be familiar with Digimon Time Stranger's lead composer, Masafumi Takada. His music has a distinct, digital, futuristic, and chaotic style that works well to set an interesting and unique tone that as a first-time player, I really felt helped separate the game from any pre-existing assumptions I had from playing Pokemon in the past. It also has emotional vocal music in both English and Japanese, which caught me off guard and pleasantly surprised. Pokemon has always been known to have a strong OST, but this game in particular sports a jazzy, relaxing OST for most of the exploration. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have the pulsing, intense songs that Pokemon's known for once the battles begin. The slower, jazzier songs make fantastic BGM if you're getting some work done. But Digimon's OST definitely felt more unique to me. Perhaps the biggest difference between the new Pokemon and Digimon games, and the main source of Pokemon's criticism, is the implementation of voice acting and story cutscenes. Though Digimon Story Time Stranger has a silent protagonist and doesn't have every story cutscene voiced, it does have a significant amount of them fully voiced, and Digimon attacks often use spoken word instead of just monster noises. The voice acting is good, too, and adds a lot of personality to the characters, with the option to pick which language you want for audio. Pokemon, on the other hand, had absolutely no voice acting at all, despite the game's massive assumed profits. Well, it does have character grunt fights on occasion, but in terms of story cutscenes, despite the beginning being filled with cinematic story cutscenes, there's absolutely nothing, to the point it can, at times, hurt immersion. I don't think the game necessarily needs voice acting if the devs don't want it for creative reasons, but I do think it needs some sort of blip noises like Ace Attorney or similar, other than one blip when you press a button, just to help keep the energy and pacing of the scenes up. Admittedly, I have fun voice acting the cutscenes myself, but I personally would feel let down playing it in complete silence. The reason Pokemon Legends ZA suffers so much from lacking voice acting and why Digimon Story Time Stranger benefits so greatly largely boils down to the character writing in both games. Both games have some genuinely fun characters with dialogue that gives them solid personalities and motivations, and hearing acting bring those personalities to life really just adds that extra oomph that text alone with modern cinematic cutscenes cannot. In Digimon, this doesn't only cover the human characters, but also the Digimon, who have a huge variety of voices that really brings all their unique forms to life. In Pokemon in particular, I would have loved to hear Canary and Tarragon fully voiced, because as a streamer, their scenes hit close to home, and I would have loved to hear that energy brought to life, especially Canary's Crash Out. The one thing about the characters that really caught me off guard as a newcomer to Digimon was how many sexy Digimon there were. I walked into this expecting Agumon, not half-naked goddesses and leather-clad women with guns. Not complaining, obviously, just not something I expected at all walking in. The main area I felt Digimon Story Time Stranger outdid Pokemon Legends ZA was the environmental design. In the original X and Y, Lumiose City was a marvel to explore and something huge at the time. The first town we could really explore properly in 3D, with so many colorful buildings, and the ability to roller skate made exploring the town feel like a treat, and was one of my absolute favorite things to do in the game. In Legends ZA, sure, you can climb on the rooftops and encounter wild Pokemon in the city, but in exchange, the city feels so gray, dull, and empty of any actual life no matter how many Pokemon or NPCs I encounter, because the buildings themselves just feel like a cardboard ghost town. I'm not asking to go in every building, but when Digimon offers such a colorful, chaotic environment to explore, as well as a replica of Shinjuku with lots of interesting shops to pass by and peek through the windows, Lumiose City's grayed out windows and lack of color just don't feel as satisfying to explore, even if the exploration is more open. I do like how more areas, especially wild zones, open up later in the game, but it still falls short to me and doesn't replicate the wow factor that the original Lumiose City once did. It's a real shame that Digimon Story Time Stranger doesn't have any form of PvP, so if you're looking to combat other players, out of both games released in October, Pokemon is still your best bet and only option, really. Leveling in both games is a bit different, as in Digimon, all Digimon level at the same time, even the ones that aren't in your party, where in Pokemon, only Pokemon actively in your party, even if they aren't being used, gain EXP. At first, I didn't like this, because I like training specific monsters for specific purposes, but honestly, it grew on me quite a bit because I just don't have the time I once did, and I can see this being a massive quality of life improvement for busier people. Though I do think if Pokemon ever implements something similar, having an option to turn it on or off would be crucial for hardcore trainers. It would be interesting to see Time Stranger open up PvP, however, because of how flexible Digimon are. You can swap attacks between different Digimon for some really unique possibilities, and change moves at any time for endless experiments and possibilities. Overall, both Pokemon Legends ZA and Digimon Story Time Stranger are genuinely fun games, and where they're a lot different from each other, it's hard to say objectively if one is a better game or not. I do personally think that Digimon Story Time Stranger comes off as a much higher production value, despite Pokemon being the game with assumedly the biggest budget and fan base, though there is a double-edged sword there too, because Pokemon's popularity made me walk in with much higher expectations than Digimon, where I was new to the series and had no assumptions at all. Pokemon also went viral not only because of the game's success, but because mocking the game, even before release, had become incredibly popular due to issues with the past few Pokemon releases, swaying public opinion even before people had the game in their hands. But overall, Pokemon still sold at least 10 times the units Digimon did. And why is that? At the end of the day, marketing and branding are everything. And Pokemon has that staying brand power that Digimon just hasn't yet been able to reach, at least to the same degree. Have you played both games? Or playing just one and have strong opinions? Let's talk about it. Let me know in the comments what you think about these two releases releasing in such close proximity, and if either of the games managed to surprise you. And if you want to grab a physical copy, consider using the link in the description to support the channel. You can get 6% off with the code Obakepam. Bye-bye!